Welcome back to the Raising Our Vibration podcast, where we explore higher consciousness through spiritual practice. And today, Stephen and I are going to discuss the Sushumna, the central channel, the infinite within you. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with Sushumna or the central channel, you can think of this as your core energy channel running right up through the center of your body. Okay, it's often called the channel of enlightenment. And why is that? It's because as we are able to connect with the felt sense of Sushumna, of the central channel, it's a portal into our sense of infinite being, of knowing ourselves as infinite consciousness. And so that's, if you think of enlightenment as realization that you are infinite consciousness, then the central channel is a portal to that. So, where is this exactly is one question that often comes up with people who we are instructing. They want to know, we come from a physicalist bias. And so people say, well, I want to know exactly where it is, like what point. So in general, you can think of it as going from the perineum or base of the spine right up through the core of the body and through the crown point of the head. And then people want to know, well, does it include the spine? Is it in front of the spine? How wide is it? All these questions that we have from our materialist, physicalist mindset. And there are correlations with the physical dimension. So we can correlate it with the vagus nerve network. We can correlate it with the spinal cord and central nervous system. However, in energetic philosophy, in yogic philosophy, in Qigong theory, the subtle energy body comes first. The subtle energy body is the template for the physical body. So it's more accurate to say, rather than saying, where is the subtle body within the physical body? It's more accurate to say that the physical body is within the subtle energy body. So you could say they occupy the same space, but they're different bodies. Okay, so the subtle body being more primary, being what comes first, what is the template that informs the growth of the physical body. Okay, so that can be a real mind bender for our materialist, physicalist mindset. But an openness to that is kind of where we need to begin. It's often very hard for those in this, especially Western culture, where we are not familiar with the subtle energy body, to kind of get a feel for what this is and then how to connect with it. So Stephen and I are constantly teaching subtle energy practices, and we do a lot of different breathing techniques with the central channel. And a common experience is that many people just have no felt sense of this at all. And why is that? Well, it's because our attention has been trained to the physical world, especially to the world around us, and maybe somewhat to our physical sensations in our body, but not at all. We haven't cultivated this subtle energy awareness. And so when instructing these practices, it's really important to first develop a foundation of interoception, of somatic awareness, of feeling into the sensations of the physical body. That's a foundation. And then also of mindfulness, because as you approach the Sushumna and the energy body, you're going to have all kinds of different sensations, sometimes pleasant, sometimes unpleasant. And it's really important to have an attitude of mindfulness, just an openness that welcomes and allows this experience in whatever way it arises for each of us. And for each of us, that arises differently. I can remember decades ago, at least 4 decades ago, 40 years plus ago, when I was first learning Tai Chi and first becoming familiar with the central channel. It's also called the Taiji Pole in Tai Chi language. And I was becoming aware of this central pole of energy, that in Tai Chi, everything revolves around this pole. Okay, so it's this center of energy, and everything is very fluid and flowing motion with this pole at the center. Okay, so I can remember at first I had no felt sense of this at all. But I remember in Tai Chi, I started to get a felt sense of energy in my feet, because it's really, you're grounded in your feet first in Tai Chi, and then you're moving, you're pushing from the feet up through the waist and expressing energy in the hands. And I could start to feel energy in my palms and fingers. And then you extend your crown, the top of your head, as if it's suspended on a string from above. And I started to feel tingling up here. And so I noticed over my initial years of Tai Chi, and it was years for this energy awakening to happen, energy sensations would wake up in different parts of my body. And so feet, hands, top of the head, that's one reason why we use these cues, Stephen, right in our practice, because these are places that the energy maybe most readily awakens. Then I started to feel in my heart, and as I felt it at the top of the head and in my heart and in the lower abdomen, these 3 primary energy centers, then I started to feel the connections between them. But this was a process of daily practice over a number of years, through which the sensation of the subtle energy in the central channel awakened. And so I know, Stephen, you're working with a lot of clients in terms of subtle energy practices, and some who can connect with the sensations, and others who really don't. And we are also, you and I together, teaching these practices. And so we have a lot of experience to draw from there. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about some of people's experiences with opening the central channel, with connecting to it or not, and how you're working with them.
Kevin, thank you, truly. And love and blessings to everybody on this beautiful day, wherever you are. So I thought I'd just begin, Kevin, just by giving a little arc of how I came to know about the central channel, because in fact that speaks to a large extent to exactly what you're saying, to coming in contact with many, many beautiful souls like yourselves that are listening, who might come to hear about the mother channel or the Sushumna for the very first time, and might wonder what on earth somebody is talking about if you've never heard of this before. And so when I was very young, in my teenage years, I was 13, and I first read Autobiography of Yogi, and it kind of hit me like a lightning strike, that there were, Yogananda talked about 3 bodies, a physical body, an astral body, and a causal body. And I was really incredibly curious and somewhat mystified by this. I came from a very solid background of my my father being a scientist and my mum being what I'll call a mystical Christian, because I think she'd agree with that too. And my dad was very science oriented. So he read Autobiography of a Yogi when I gave it to him, and he said, yeah. He said, I don't agree with a lot of this. So that was my dad's approach to it, whereas mum, would take to it like a duck to water. So she said, yeah, all the Christian saints, they have similar experiences. So I got very different messages. And in reading Autobiography of Yogi, so this is a long time prior to working with any clients whatsoever, I decided I'd do self-realization foundation or fellowships, lessons at those early stages. And I took to them, like glue, really. I decided that if Yogananda said this was what would happen, then I would commit myself to understanding all about the central channel and the physical, astral, and causal bodies and all the way that everything worked. There's a way to know God. And I applied myself dedicatedly and I'm a very devotional, kind of a bhakti yogi, very devotionally over the next period of years to do exactly what was said. And I certainly discovered by following it exactly, pretty much to the letter. I'd be doing 2 hours practice in the morning. I'd get up at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock, even as a youngster, and do 2 hours practice in the morning and 2 hours practice at night. I still remember Mum used to come up in the lounge. Finished yet? Because she couldn't believe that this 13-year-old would actually want to spend 2 years in the morning and 2 years at night. But something in my past life karma must have spoken to that, because I really did it very easily. And all those experiences that I described in Autobiography of a Yogi, they unfolded very easily and very rapid, almost as if I'd been a previous student of Yogananda at some point, which I've pretty no doubt you've been given, and probably many people listening who love Yogananda can also relate to this and feel like they've known him prior to this lifetime. So the experience of the central channel, the mother channel, the Sushumna, came very easily for me. I just took it that, okay, this is what happens, and this is what Yogananda says, therefore you feel it. And perhaps at that point, I was just naturally maybe good at interoception. I'd done a lot of martial arts. I knew what it felt like to feel in the body. And I certainly knew there was a lot of magic in the body, a little bit like the 16th century mystic poet Mirabai says, something like, in the body are gardens, many gardens. I always loved her poetry, and that particularly spoke to me, that inside your body there are many gardens, often many rare treasures that are untouched, that we don't even know about, simply because we haven't explored there. So in those very early years, I was particularly open to that subtle energy body. And I realized I didn't know a lot about it, and I wanted to learn about it. And so as I made my way through the subtle energy body, and it's the varying ways it arises. And Kevin and I have spoken about this many times, that you come to it primarily through interoception. So you need to know how to turn inwards. And that was certainly all the practices I were doing were all inner practices at those stages, 4 hours a day, but more. Because obviously, when you're doing 4 hours a day, you start to become aware that at other times of your day, you turn inwards. So I'd be sitting in class at school and I'd still be turning inwards to these practices, because they became sort of such a very beautiful part of my day. And equally, I was doing the alchemy of Saint Germain. So I was doing a lot of interior. So I had 2 complete practices I was doing, spending, probably I'd spend about 2 hours drawing tarot cards and learning about alchemy and doing astrology. So I had a fairly rich teenage inner life. And I think that interoception helped me to actually feel what was going on in the mother channel, and I didn't sort of doubt that was something that was there. I just presumed that the body had a language, the inner body had a language that it spoke to, and that if we listened hard enough, then we would start to hear and understand pathways and energy centers in the body and all of the things that Yogananda spoke about. So then at that very early age, Kevin, it came to me that because I got involved with the Buddhist practices very early on, particularly the Tibetan Buddhist practices through the Dalai Lama, it became very obvious that the traditions of the Hindu sages and saints and the Tibetan sages and saints were incredibly similar, and that they used maybe slightly different terms, sometimes counting the number of chakras in a different way and all this kind of thing. But fundamentally, the pathways were the same and the energy centers were the same, and this idea of the force, if we want to go to Star Wars fans out there, the idea of prana, or that we've got a prana body that's a life force body and it's within us, and that we can actually connect to this life force or prana or winds within the body, and that in turn, once you really listen deeply inside, that guides us into the mother channel. So the winds actually all collect in this very central way, just as you were speaking about, Kevin. And as I began to study in the Tibetan traditions, I also came around about that time, so now we're talking my early 20s, I also came around to about that time to, let's call them Star Nations practices, where I was able to connect through some very powerful guides and mentors on this planet to traditions that are not of Earth, which is spoken about in many of the indigenous cultures. So to those of you that maybe connect with the Hopi peoples or connect with the Achua peoples or of the Amazon, or many of our indigenous elders speak about connections with other worlds. And when I made that connection, they also spoke about the central channel and the subtle energy body. In fact, they said that there were different traditions of central channel practice that were very close to the kinds of energy bodies that the beings from other systems, other star systems inhabited. And I found that very curious. That came through an exterior source. It was nothing to do with me, and it confirmed many of the things that I was already feeling. So it was through that kind of input, the alchemy of Saint Germain, which spoke about the central channel, the Kriya yoga of Yogananda, which spoke about the central channel, traditions of Tibet and Padmasambhava and Yeshe Salgyo, which spoke about the central channel, the mystical Christian traditions which spoke about a central channel, and some of those hidden gospels, and the otherworldly origins, which spoke about the central channel. And I thought, this is too good to be true. There must be.
How do we not know about this?
Yes.
when it's all throughout history and in all these traditions, all these different cultures? It's like we've just shut the door on all this in this Western, supposedly scientific materialist culture.
Exactly, Kevin. I became, incredibly aware that there wasn't a lot of research in the West that was being done in this. On this. In Japan, I remember I took great interest through Masaru Emoto, the water molecule man, in his friend Hiroshi Motoyama, who was doing all this study into central channel and energy centers. So there was a little bit, but very little that I could find in the West. And yet it seems so obvious that there were areas that we hadn't explored. So as a result, it was at those points. So again, talking about my middle 20s, because I'd qualified as a therapist, a counselor, I was registered with psychotherapists and Counsellors Association in New South Wales at that stage. And I started to incorporate a lot of this into my therapeutic practice. And so clients would start to come to me for, I guess, what they call their inner drivers or their inner chi or their inner energy work. And they wanted to know how they could contact that, connect with that, because some of them had heard about it, some of them were very interested in, pursuing this. And of course, I, in my, misguided youth, just sort of thought, oh, this must be natural. You just teach people the same steps, sort of not really thinking the degree of the years that I'd already gone through from the age of 13, especially like those couple of hours in the morning, couple of hours at night, where I was dedicatedly actually grooving that central channel and that lower dantian without actually really even thinking about it. It didn't occur to me that people wouldn't feel the central channel. So in a lot of those ancient traditions, the in enlightenment itself comes from this connection, this transformation on a whole body level. So we're talking, cellular and energetic, and it comes from deep inside the core of the body. It's not, I think a lot of people, when they look at, say, for example, Christian pictures of the halo, there's often people get very heady about that. Oh, it must all happen up here. It's all to do with the brain. But in fact, we have a central core and we have a brain, heart, gut connection. And equally, we have this mother. If you even just look at the 3 dantians, rather than the 7 energy centers or chakras, you'd realize that it's all talking about the same thing. Even the Taoist traditions use these, for example, microcosmic orbit breathing, which uses the central channel. So you realize in all these traditions, and we haven't heard about it, and it did pass my mind, Kevin, that we don't know about this in schools. How come none of the Western schools anywhere teach this kind of thing to children? Because as a child, 13-year-old is still relatively young. I could never. I used to ask the teachers about. They'd say, "Oh, we don't really know. That's all sort of mystical stuff." I remember asking my parish priest.
This materialist bias, which just negates these other dimensions of being.
Exactly. I remember vividly going to, at the age of 13, because I'd come across all of this, and I took it upon myself to go to the parish priest and grill him on the practices which I'd been studying of, Saint Teresa of Avila, of course, which talks about very similar things, about the ecstasy body. And she uses different terms, but they're very similar in nature. And he just said to me, "Oh yeah, that's the stuff of Christian mystics. That's not for us ordinary mortals."
Right. Just for the saints. Right.
Just for the saints. And he wouldn't talk about it. He wouldn't even talk. But I said, the practices, they're so similar to Hindu mystics and Tibetan mystics and Taoist mystics. Yeah, he said, "Oh, it's just all, that's just all the stuff of fable and legend. It doesn't really happen in real life." It's like, so I of course, that was a great motivator for me, because I thought, well, if it doesn't happen in real life, then maybe we can create some opportunities for people where it really does happen. And I was most curious how to do that. So as I explored the mother channel itself, and she's called the mother in the center. And I do love that she's called the mother channel, the Uma. She's the largest of all the body's subtle energy pathways. And she runs straight from the core of your body, the perineum or the root center, right up to the crown. So I often get, so if you're listening to this and you say, "Well, I can't feel it," I used to get people simply to do this. If you rub on your crown and simultaneously rub on your tailbone, and you can feel, if you do that for long enough, just that, you start to get this feeling of, and then just feel energy that connects the two, because you are aware of your spine, even though you might not be able to feel it. So I used to do that for people, and then I'd be behind them, Kevin, and I'd run my hand from, so long as they were agreeable to me, either shifting the energy just near their spine, or if they were open to it, allowing me to tap. So I'd tap all the way up the spine and all the way down. And then or I'd encourage a friend or a partner to do that when I was teaching couples how to connect with the mother channel. That I found was really useful. The actual physical tapping and then you can also do it on yourself. You can tap at the lower energies. It just gets a little difficult between the heart and the throat, depending on how flexible you are. And then you can tap all the way up and then all the way down. And if you do that quite consistently, then you start to get the shivers in the spine, the sort of goosebumps, and you think, oh, I can kind of feel because the spine has energy. We know there is a cerebrospinal passage with fluid in it that is active, that is there, and yet we just don't feel it.
And I think that taking that kind of activating, energizing, and then applying posture, feeling the spine, like in Qigong, we imagine, and Tai Chi, the tailbone is really heavy and the head is light and there's a string, and you feel the extension from that heavy tailbone right up, and you tucking the chin helps, and then feel like it's a string of pearls, as you've often described, with a string pulling you up, and feel that extension all the way up your spine, through the base of your skull, through the top of your head. Now, it's hard for me to say what someone who hasn't done all this work feels when they do that. But when I do that, or, when you do that, right away, when I tuck the chin, anchor the tailbone, draw the spine upright, and then take a breath, deep breath, I feel that right up that line.
Right. Exactly, Kevin. And in fact, for those of you who are listening now, I'm often asked, what does Kundalini or Shakti feel like to you? It's like a current. It's actually, for me, it's an electrical current. It actually feels like my spine is alive, like a serpent or dragon, however you want to relate to that energy. If you imagine a winding or a river of energy, a current that literally is going up and down your spine, that's exactly what it feels like, and has felt like for about 40 odd years. Since I remember I'd been might have been a couple of years into doing this, and of course it ignites and you have all kinds of cosmic consciousness experience. It sort of bursts and flows. And so I get a lot of clients coming to me wanting to awaken their Kundalini or wanting to awaken their Shakti. And I said, well, actually it is awake. It's just that you don't perceive it. And also you don't know yet how to work with it, because you're not spending hours at it. I always give the analogy that, for everybody listening, do you know how to draw? So yeah, of course. So that's the first part. Do you know there is a Kundalini in your body? Hopefully by the time you've listened to this, you recognize there is a coiled energy. There is a subtle energy force in your body. So do you know how to draw? Yes. If you wanted to get good at drawing, what would you do? Oh, well, I'd spend hours and hours every day drawing characters so that I could be, like my daughter wants to be, an animator for Disney, for example. You'd spend hours, my daughter literally will spend from, if we give her the opportunity, from 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 or 3 in the afternoon, just drawing. And so that was the attention that I gave to the mother channel over many, many years. I just simply spent hours and hours and hours really curious. It was just a mystery to me. And I thought, I'll just be open to listening to what my body's energies want to do. And if you spend hours, you'll discover things.
Yeah, I think that attitude right there is really key, that openness and that curiosity versus trying to make this happen, which is also kind of our Western materialist make things happen mindset. And I think that's where people can both get frustrated or try to force things and run into difficulties. Because if you're really trying, and there are lots of teachers out there and some very popular teachers who are really trying to get you to force it and bring it up strongly. And what I know you and I really both believe that it's that openness, that gentleness, that curiosity, having the attitude, this flow is already here. We're just awakening to it, right? We're not trying to make it happen. We're just sensitizing to it. And that has a whole different feel about it than making it happen, right? And that different attitude makes all the difference in terms of just allowing this natural flow to arise. And also there's tensions along this route, right? Because there's traumas and there's tensions, especially between the shoulder blades, behind the heart, protecting the heart, in the lower back, in the neck. And so if we're trying to force it, the energy might run into these energy blocks, so to speak, and we have pain there, or we have whereas if we just allow the body to be as it is, we tune in through interoception, we have a gentle practice of sensitizing to the energy body and whatever is present there, and not trying to rush ahead. Like in Qigong and Tai Chi practice, you work just on cultivating lower dantian sensation and vitality for years, right? Before you start to work with that circulation of the orbit, or that in Kriya, there's times of energization practices, right? There's a whole foundation of that you build this interoception of subtle energy, and also work with where there is tension in the body to release that tension, so that as you tune into this energy flow, it can flow clearly and smoothly.
Kevin, you're right. You brought up so many memories of different times. Whenever I've gone, for example, to monasteries in Japan or in Nepal or Tibet or ashrams in India, the teachers or the masters, no matter what level you're at, they'll always get you to begin. They want you to simply be open to being grounded in whatever practices you're doing. So that was one thing I was really present to, is that you come back to very simple things. And then it's the same with Yogananda's practices. He has, as you said, energization practices. Then you learn how to use Hong Saw, the breathing of using breathing and mantra. Then you use Om practice. You learn how to hear the Om. This is all prior to working with the mother channel through Kriya Yoga. Same in the Tibetan practices. You don't go to subtle energy practices straight away. Mingyur Rinpoche teaches subtle energy practice only as part of a retreat. Otherwise, he works very steadily and first on all the sutras and the way that you actually can understand this, and then into some of the tantric practices, which are starting to embody them prior to doing subtle energy practice, prior to doing awareness practices, say, of Mahamudra and Dzogchen. So there's a formality, and for a good reason, because if you dive straight into opening the mother channel without any awareness, just as a friend, I remember a friend of mine some years ago, he went along to a retreat, and it was they simply pointed him to the mother channel and said, yeah, just do this and keep doing it. And they gave him no restraints. There was no grounding. And he literally, everything fell apart in his life, because he came out of that and just decided he'd do this one thing. And he didn't know how to integrate back into family life, he got completely obsessed with it. And it created a lot of trouble in his energy body, to the point actually where he had to seek psychiatric help for quite a number of years, because in a manner of words, blew his mind. We kept drawing energy up into the brain, which is often how people perceive it, that I've got to get there and I've got to open the crown energy center without actually building just as you've been saying. And I've had the same experience with Tai Chi and Kung Fu and Qigong, that you build the lower Dantian energies first and foremost. And in fact, in a lot of the client, since we were getting to that point of client, many of the clients that I've had, because I start them always with very basic awareness practice, then very simple feeling into interoception and energy, and then lower Dantian and body scanning. All of those practices we do prior to actually introducing them to the mother channel or torus breathing. And some of the clients' comments over the years have been, oh, I can't relate to the mother channel because I can't actually feel it. And I know there's supposed to be something there, but I really relate to the lower Dantian practice because, I can feel energy when when I connect with my gut, when I breathe there. For example, doing the 6 direction lower Dantian practice that we often do with clients and groups and students. That particular practice helps you to generate that core energy, and at least to spend a period of time, and quite considerable time, generating lower Dantian energy awareness before you do the mother channel, because the mother channel is more subtle. And you did mention, Kevin, and that the openness is really important. The mother, when you experience the mother channel directly, she's like a pure open sky. I always related to her energy like a Tibetan sky, because I've been in Tibet. I've sat under that sky out on the tundra, out in the desert, or the top of the world, and it feels like that. I can understand really how many of the Tibetan lamas sort of were easily able to have these direct experience, because they're right at the top of the world, actually experiencing that naturally every day. And the mother channel experience feels like that. You suddenly have a direct experience of that open, vast expanse that's limitless and infinite. And you just know it. It's unforgettable because, of course, you're that. You're not separate from it.
And that's what initially opened me to this experience, was that vast open sky of being out here in Colorado and Utah, and actually moved here for that. I had such a powerful experience of this vast open sky out here, that moved from the East Coast out here, and been here ever since.
I love
and
that.
then going back to that idea of preparation, in our subtle energy meditation course, there's body scanning, as we talked about, and there's these downward flowing practices first, right? Relaxation, interoception, relaxing down 3 lines, inner smiling, where we're relaxing everything down and opening the channels down as a preparation before we get to this central channel breathing. And we're in a culture where everybody wants to have these experiences like that, and if you don't have them like that, well, it just doesn't work for me, right? That doesn't work for me. It's like, how many times did you do it? Well, I tried it. Oh, so once, right? So yeah. So anyway, you can do these. I mean, you want to start with these preparatory practices, these body scans, these interoceptive practices where you're becoming aware of the sensations, somatic awareness, sensations in the body, and becoming aware of tensions in the body, and becoming aware of the flow of the breath in the body. And it's that breath, that interoception of somatic awareness, that's the foundation, and that's what starts to awaken the feeling that will then enable us to be sensitive enough to feel subtle energy sensations. And it's the foundation also of releasing tension, which interferes with the flow of subtle energy.
Beautiful, Kevin. Beautiful. If you're listening and thinking, I really want to practice this, I really do advise you go to a teacher and actually learn in a dedicated fashion with that person. Kevin and I teach this as well. It's a really good practice to start to do. And if you want to practice and you're thinking, well, I really want something now, I would suggest that you do the following. One is, first of all, use your body to actually start to, just as I was mentioning about tapping, use your body to connect to that, so you become aware of the spine. I get my daughter, and I've taught her from when she was very little, to, as I mentioned, to tap the spine. So we tap her spine so she can feel it. Can you feel that? So that's one thing you can do. The other one is you can trace the path and coordinate it with your breath. So as you take an inhalation, just simply as if you're drawing it, and I mentioned drawing before, just simply inhale, draw the breath up to the crown, and exhale, and just feel this beautiful, easeful flow of energy that flows all the way around in that torus-like pattern down to the crown, down to the perineum, down to the base of the spine from the crown. And just simply practice that a couple of times, 2 or 3 times a day. Don't overdo it, and make it very gentle, just as Kevin was explaining. Make it a very gentle, easeful inhalation, exhalation. And just let this part where you're open to the sky, because that's what the nature of the Sushumna is like, is this very open sky-like practice. Then, so as you inhale, how I'd put it is that you connect with your belly first, and you feel the ocean of energy in your belly, and then just breathe this beautiful river of energy up to your crown, and as you exhale, just open it to the sky. I use very natural metaphors when people are just starting, and don't overdo it. Just simply have a sense of curiosity and openness, like a child. Have a very beginner's mind, or a child's freshness to this. Just do it a couple of times a day, and if you find yourself out in a park and you're walking along, you can do the same thing. You just connect down here, just feel, oh, okay, I can feel my belly energies. And then as you're walking along, you just inhale, exhale out. It's just this beautiful gesture where you're inhaling, feeling the flow of energy up, exhaling, feeling it flowing out and all around you into the space. It's so simple, and it's just a really beautiful, easeful practice you can do. Just a couple of breaths. I usually advise people to take no more than 2 or 3 breaths a time. So do it 2 or 3, and then just leave it alone. Just notice the spaciousness that comes to your day after that, so that it becomes more an integrated, natural practice, rather than, as Kevin was saying, something I'm trying to, I've got to awaken this Kundalini. Don't even try to awaken it. Let yourself be totally effortless and natural with the fact that this is a natural part of your being.
Yeah. And that's a wonderful, simple practice. And a great foundation for that is the short course that we teach, The Inner Secret, where we teach this breathing calm happiness in the lower Dantian. And that's a great foundation. That little mini course that we have on udemy.com, which you can find a link to on raisingourvibration.net, is a great introduction to just interoception, feeling inside your body, posture points, mindfulness, and just a nice, easeful, very short practices that can introduce you to the foundations that can grow into this more expanded practice.
Absolutely, Kevin. When you're talking about that expansiveness, I'll finish from my part just on this one other note, and that was through the blessings of Yogananda and all those great traditions, Sri Yukteswar and Lahiri Mahashaya and Babaji and Mataji. I was really blessed by both his self-realization fellowship and Ananda to be able to teach lots of Kriya Bandhs over quite a long period of time. And one of the common things that used to strike me, and obviously struck the devotees of those particular paths, was they would say, oh, look, I've been doing Kriya for years and years, but I just don't feel anything. I've in the beginning there was something, there was a light, and then right now it's got stale or it's got old because I'm doing, and I asked them, really quiz them about their practice. Oh yeah, it's just this sort of mechanical, you do this breath. I'd always ask them, how do you do it? I wouldn't say anything about how I thought you could do it, just ask them how. And they'd always describe this mechanical process, which is what happens. You go through a period in your practice sometimes where the very practice that you've been doing becomes just mechanical and habitual. So I simply go back to the mother channel's nature itself, which is this open sky, this open sky-like awareness. And I would ask them about devotion. So I'd say, what if you felt that whatever you were devoted to, for example, could be your grandmom, could be a pet, could be just being out in nature, could be something very simple and very beautiful. What if you were to do that simple inhalation and exhalation with that sense, with that feeling? Because the key is the feeling. It's not the mechanical habitual process of it. That's just because that's all that happens. You create a habit and you get lost in the mechanics of it. So
or you're just doing it here.
Yeah. You're literally
in your head.
You're literally doing an idea, and that's you're doing a conceptual process. So that feeling, that just beautiful sense of okay, that's why I always recommend people just to do it a little bit at a time and do it very simply, and bring a sense of a feeling that feels really good for you. For me and you, Kev, it happened to be the sky, and different, yours in Colorado and me in Tibet. And for many of you, you'll be able to relate to natural metaphors. And the key is the feeling, because the feeling, I remember that feeling under the Tibetan sky. It's very awe-filled. And the same kind of thing with Kevin in Colorado. There's this really incredible sense of the vastness and the spaciousness. So find the feeling that really connects to you, that connects to the sort of feeling that would make you want to do this every day. Any minute that you felt a little bit uncertain, a little bit doubtful, you could just bring it back to this and you go, that's it. And then you just breathe with that feeling. It's really beautiful. It speaks to Mirabai's, in the body there are many gardens, or there are many gardens within the body.
And 3 of them that we always talk about are the garden of the feet. So if you can really feel the sensations in your feet opening into the ground, really feel the sensations in your hands when you just rest your hands, palms open, and you feel that openness, that softness in your hands. And you really feel that upright spine and that tingling at the top of your head. It's those simple feelings that are the gateway to all these sensations, that are the gateway to feeling this subtle energy within and all around you. So thank you, Stephen, for this wonderful discussion. I hope all of you found this interesting and found something in it for your own practice. And thank you for listening and for participating with us. And if you'd like more information on meditation, subtle energy meditation, awareness practices, please visit us at raisingourvibration.net, raisingourvibration.net. And we'd love to hear from you there. Till next time.